Hey, today we're going to talk about 5.1, the tragedy of the commons. So take a moment, check out the enduring understanding, look at the learning objective, pause the video and review the essential knowledge, and set up your Cornell notes. The concept of tragedy of the commons is that if you have a public or a shared space, overall, people will take advantage of it. Like if I'm only allowed to take 2 candies from a dish, and I know that nobody's watching, and I'll be like, oh, they really got my favorite candy in there. And I know nobody's watching, I might take 3 candies. I might take 4 candies. If nobody's around and I'm feeling greedy, I might just empty the whole dish and be like, whatever, nobody's going to know it's me. That's the same concept that what happens with tragedy of the commons. So any commons is a shared resource. For example, the global ocean is a shared resource. We can overfish it. The atmosphere is a shared resource. Let's drive fossil fuel burning cars and that emit carbon dioxide and pollutants. Great. We have public lands, rangelands, and forests. Let's overgraze these lands. Let's cut down every tree and decimate biodiversity. Also aquifers or groundwater, so we can over-withdraw water for agricultural purposes. These are all examples of a commons. So the concept tragedy of the commons, it must be a public resource, it has to be overused by humans, and there should be some sort of lack of penalty. One example or one impact of this is the collapse of the global fisheries, and this is happening currently in the world. The number of fish that are, the populations of fish in the ocean has greatly depleted in the last 50 years, which reduces the food supply, but also can cause a trophic cascade. So food webs are interrupted, and some organisms may overpopulate, some organisms may not have enough food, they may starve and go extinct either globally or at least within certain biomes. This again leads to biodiversity loss. Another example or impact is air pollution, can lead to climate change, which can lead to biodiversity loss. Air pollution can also lead to respiratory illnesses. Another impact of tragedy of the commons is deforestation, which is a form of habitat destruction and can lead to biodiversity loss. Also, we can contaminate our groundwater globally, which can deplete the drinking water quality, or at least have less water that is quality enough for us to drink. Globally, the fisheries have collapsed, and the reason for this is because we take too many fish, and the whole point is to take fish that are the right age and take the right amount. We don't want to take pre-reproductive fish only. It doesn't make sense only to take the adult fish that are beyond reproductive age. We want to take an optimal yield. So we want to leave some behind so we have young fish and older fish to replenish the population. We don't want to leave too much behind because then we're going to have less fish for humans to consume. But if we fish too much, there's not going to be any fish left behind to replenish the population. And in other words, we want to take the maximum yield that's going to still allow the population to increase. Right now, we're currently over in this section, and that's not a good thing. So one other concept that's come up in another video, but an externality is a consequence of our actions that's not really factored into the cost. One more recent externality is during COVID-19, when people are wearing masks, first of all, people were not catching COVID as much or as readily if you're wearing masks and you're practicing social distancing. But one externality that was not really calculated into this whole idea was the fact that we got lower cases of common cold, and there were lower cases of communicable diseases. Another example of an externality, this is a negative one, pesticides from agriculture can contaminate the groundwater. So the cost of maybe lettuce or any sort of produce that we may purchase at the store, the costs are already reflected in the planting of it, in the harvesting of it, in the maintenance of it with the insecticides and the pesticides. However, we're not really looking at the expenses, the added expenses that come from the groundwater contamination. If you have to clean up that groundwater, it's going to be a very expensive process, and that doesn't get factored into the cost of the produce that we're trying to raise in the first place. So, how can we prevent this? First of all, regarding the public resource, if we mandate that that all land is owned privately, either by individuals or by governments, we can reduce the tragedy of the commons impact. If we prevent human overuse, in other words, we can charge fees or implement taxes to use this resource, like, for example, a permit system for grazing or logging, and that is done through the Bureau of Land Management. They would collect fees from the ranchers. And another thing we need to eliminate is this lack of a penalty, because we need to issue fines for criminal penalties and violations. And this has been done. We have several laws: the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Safe Drinking Water Act. If we can manage these three factors that contribute to the tragedy of the commons, we can prevent biodiversity loss. Remember the HIPCO, the acronym: habitat loss, invasive species, pollution, climate change, and overharvesting. All of these are either directly or indirectly related to the tragedy of the commons. So this was a very rapid approach to a very basic concept, but I would like you to practice with your FRQ writing. I want you to describe another commons that is impacted by human activity and propose a solution for managing that commons. I look forward to seeing your responses. I hope that this was informative. Thank you for your attention, and I will see you soon.